Hi guys, what day is it? Tuesday! Sometimes in this quarantine, do you ever get like that? Where you're like, wait, what day is it? I'm not actually going to school. When's the weekend? Yeah. Anyways, I get like that too. Well, today is Tuesday. It is Taco Tuesday. We only have about 2 more weeks of school left. Yay! I'm so excited. Looking forward into the future. There might be some surprises. Like I might do a end of the year Zoom party if you would like to join me, not this week but next week, our last week of school. Something else that I'd like to do as well is to have a little give you guys awards. That would be awesome if I could still do that. That's what I'm thinking about doing. So yeah, look out for those. I'll be posting some more information about the end of the year party on this Clever site, but I'll also be doing it on Living Tree. So be checking out both of those. Okay, anyways, we are, as you remember from yesterday, what were we talking about? Go back into your brain, get out that file cabinet within your brain and go back to yesterday. Go to your memories. What did we learn about? We started talking about activism and activism in regards to climate change. And with that, we talked about how a movement or a protest begins and how it spreads throughout all of the nations and around all of our world. So that was our essential questions. Why does a movement start? I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see that again. Our essential questions was, why does a movement begin, or how does it begin, and how does a movement spread or continue? The skill we were working on yesterday was inference, and if you remember, we did a little bit about text evidence. I gave you a clue from our text, and then you use your background knowledge to make an inference. So this was some inferences I made yesterday on the text evidence. So the first one was talking about the youth were leading another series of worldwide protests. The effort across countries showed unity. This was in the very beginning of our text. So my inference that I was able to collect was using it, mainly discussed what unity meant. I was able to use my context clues or the words within the sentence to infer what unity means. I said that unity means people are coming together. People from all over the world are coming together to fight for something. This could be, this discusses how a movement begins. So a movement can begin through unity. We have to have some sort of unity or togetherness for a movement to begin. Another text clue or text evidence I showed you guys was the protests, how they began. The protest started in Australia, where an estimated 300,000 young people in the cities took to the streets. My first reaction to that, or like using my background knowledge, 300,000 is a lot of people. So I said exactly that. 300,000 people is a lot of people. That makes me infer that if a lot of people are coming together in unity to fight for a cause, this must be a really important cause. So this is telling us how it's starting, is a lot of people are joining together. That tells us, answers that question, how is it starting? There needs to be an important cause for a lot of people to come together. And then another text, I want to move down to this one is, can elected leaders be pressured to make the difficult choices necessary to halt the world's warming or climate change? It's the same idea. So elected leaders are like our president, our governors, our mayors, our senators, all of those people who are elected to work in the government. That's what it means by elected leaders. So I'm making an inference that our elected leaders, they could be pressured because, as you heard earlier, there was so many people that are protesting and fighting for this cause. And that includes, a part of that big number of people includes young people who really want to make that difference. And young people, as you know, are our future. And elected leaders, they are supposed to represent us. They're supposed to represent the people. So if all the people are trying to make a change, shouldn't our elected leaders want to make that change too? Let's see. So today what we're going to be reading, we're going to read to the end of the article. We're going to be working on the same skill of inference. Once again, I'm going to show you guys some text evidence. I'm going to pull out certain quotes. and you are going to try and make that inference from those certain quotes. So we last left off on discussing what certain changes the government or elected leaders could start making. So it started right here, the sort of changes that they could start making and that people were demanding in these protests was, one, halting deforestation. That means halting the cutting of trees, stop cutting trees. Deforestation means we are stopping forest or we are tearing down forest. Protect the world's oceans and embrace more sustainable agriculture. So more sustainable agriculture means more effective agriculture, finding different resources and not using fossil fuels. The strikes came 3 days before world leaders were set to gather at the United Nations. That's called the UN, on September 23rd. The leaders from many countries will be at much anticipated a climate summit or meeting. Antonio Guterres is a top leader at the UN. Guterres has insisted countries there promise to have zero carbon emissions by 2050. That means emission is when we have a big, like, have you ever been by, let's say, a oil rig or a big building, and then you all of a sudden see a big cloud of smoke and you're like, whoa, what is that? That cloud of smoke is actually an emission. An emission is when it's like a big cloud of something shooting out into the air. So this emission is full of carbon. That's a chemical. So carbon is created when fossil fuels are burnt. So when we have, it's basically, it's not very good for our environment to have all those clouds of smoke, all of that pollution. All of that pollution is created first by fossil fuels being burned. So imagine my hand's a fossil fuel, it's burning. And then when that, it's basically when those fossil fuels are burnt, it goes into the air and you have carbon all around you. So that was my first text evidence. It says Gutierrez insisted countries have zero of those clouds of smoke, zero carbon emissions. Carbon is created by the burning of fossil fuels. Burning of fossil fuels is used a lot of times in factories. If you, let's say, look at your phone, okay? That's something that some of you have. A computer, some of you have computers. Even a binder. All of these things and a pen are made in probably factories. You have to think to power those machines that help make these items. Those machines sometimes burn fossil fuels to start working. So the burning of fossil fuels creates that carbon emission or all the chemicals in the air. So you can think of it. So when you are getting all of these items, you have to think, in these factories, the machines that make these things, how are they powered? Sometimes they're powered by burning fossil fuels. So making an inference using our background knowledge and what I just kind of talked about in our text evidence, I think it would be very hard for countries to go to a zero carbon emission. I think it would be hard because we would have to find another way of manufacturing or making items. I'm gonna go back to here where it was our article. So the promises from other countries could include they're gonna reduce government spending for fossil fuels. So that means they're not gonna spend money on fossil fuels. Oil and coal are examples of fossil fuels. So imagine yourself driving in your car. When you're driving in your car, you're burning that fossil fuels. You're burning oil. It could also mean no more coal-fired power plants. So those power plants are what makes a lot of items you have in your homes today. I told leaders not to come with fancy speeches, but with concrete committees, Gutierrez said. The UN summit will be an important test for the world. Many countries signed the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. This meeting will show if the countries can actually follow through on slashing, that means getting rid of, carbon emissions as fast as scientists say it's needed. Scientists want to avoid the worst effects of climate change. I'm wondering what exactly would be those worst effects of climate change. And so earlier on it gave us a very interesting text clue. It said our text evidence was that governments were no longer going to spend money on fossil fuels. So right here, the promises from other countries could include reduced government spending for fossil fuels. Oil and coal are examples of fossil fuels. So the inference I'm making is that by reducing the amount of spending for fossil fuels, they are going to then have more money to spend on maybe other resources. Maybe they will try out other technologies such as water, maybe sun, solar power, maybe wind and wind power. So those are all natural resources that we could be using that are renewable and are unlike fossil fuels, like oil. Okay, so going back over here, teen activists call for real action. Among the largest of the protests were likely the one in New York City. It was led by a 16-year-old Swedish climate activist, Greta Thunberg. She testified before US Congress last week that nations must make unheard of actions to cut their carbon emissions in the next 10 years. You gotta think again, why are we having to cut carbon emissions? Why do we need to cut all of this carbon getting into our air? I don't want you to listen to me, Greta said to American lawmakers as a part of her message. She said they should pay attention to facts found from studies about the climate. I want you to listen to the scientists, and I want you to unite behind the science. And then I want you to take real action. So that was just, as it said earlier, she was only 16. I'm wondering, as a 16-year-old, how did she feel going up in front of all these people and giving this speech in front of all the protesters? And once again, she made a very interesting a quote or text evidence that I would like to look into. I want you to listen to the scientists, and I want you to unite behind the science. And then I want you to take real action. From what she said, I'd like you to make an inference. I can infer, why is she wanting them to unite behind science? Why is science the most important part of this conversation? Why does science matter when we are talking about climate change and the global warming that's happening around us? Like, you can think about that. Why is she asking them to really pay attention to scientists and not just activists and elected leaders, but instead the people who study the science of our air or atmosphere? In Moscow, Russia, Archik Makayan, I may have said that wrong, sorry, is a 24-year-old violinist. He says seeing Greta made a difference for him. I thought climate change was just science, but Greta had the right words to explain. Makayan said, he said everyone should be concerned. Russia ranks as the world's 4th largest producer of greenhouse gases. That's the same thing, or you can think of that as like carbon emissions as well, mixed in there. The top 3 of greenhouse gases, or things that are bad for our atmosphere, are China, US, and India. Russia's government didn't allow Makayan to hold a group demonstration, so he staged a one-man protest instead. It's very interesting, that last line. Why, I'm wondering, why did Russia, one of these big countries and nations, not allow people to have a group demonstration? They could only do it by themselves. Versus when we look back in America, New York, or no, this picture was in London. Look at all those people. That is definitely a group demonstration. I wonder why countries are different and how they're allowing people to protest or come together as a group and to fight for a change. My last line or text evidence I'd like you guys to think about is the line, Russia ranks as the 4th largest producer of greenhouse gases. So remember, greenhouse gases are very negative or a bad thing for our air. They make it, greenhouse gases are what is basically creating climate change, creating that global warming. The top 3 are China, US, and India. So we are one of the top 3. I'm wondering, what are these 3 nations going to do? How are they going to reduce or decrease or lower greenhouse gases? How could we make that change in America? I'd like you guys to really think about that. Moving on, how can you be a person to fight for climate change and to make people want to change what's happening with our carbon emissions and greenhouse gases? That's the end of my read aloud. Make sure you guys do your exit ticket. Also, make sure that you have paused and you've written some of these inferences down after I've gone over the quotes. I kind of went over my inference, but I'd like you to make your own inferences because that's what's going to be asked on our exit tickets today. Have a great Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow, guys. Bye.